How long is it?
All right,
Good.
here we are.
Here we
Another
are.
Sunday, albeit a couple weeks later, through the holidays, but we're back in White Magic, and we're going to be talking about astral energy and fear today in chapter 10. And do we know the page number? On the PDF, it's 136.
Yep, I have it marked here. Oh, I thought I had it marked. Hang on.
Yeah, this should be a lot of fun, and it should be very something we can see very easily, especially in the world around us today as we dig into this, and the absolute need for it to be looked at deeper.
Right. And that's page 293 in the blue book for those using. Astral Energy and Fear, page 293.
So let's just get started and see where this goes. This is going to be awesome. The subject now to be considered is of most practical application, for it concerns the astral body, the body in which a man is preeminently polarized and of which he is more potently conscious than any other body. The etheric body is really below the threshold of consciousness, and the etheric body being made of what we know as one thread, right? That connects us to source, right? And connects us to each other, essentially, and everything is connected through it. But it's said to be one single thread. Human beings remain unaware of the passage of forces through this vehicle, and the nearest they get to the recognition of it is when they speak in terms of vitality or lack of vitality. So I guess there we can kind of see how our energy, where our energy comes from, in a sense, right? The physical body makes its presence felt when something goes wrong or through the gratification of one or other of the appetites. The situation is, however, different in connection with the astral body, for there is the vehicle of experience for the majority, and few there are who do not pass the greater part of their conscious life recording the reactions of that body and vibrating between the two poles of happiness and misery, of satisfaction or non-satisfaction, of assurance or doubt, of courage or of fear. So right there, he's saying that we can be aware of this in our own beingness, right? This really means that the inherent force and life of the emotional sentient vehicle govern the life expression and mold the experience of the incarnated soul. So we're emotional beings. There is of value to us to understand something of what those forces are, where they come from, and how they act and react on the man. There lies his battleground, and there also lies his field of victory. To begin with, it is advisable to bear in mind that all astral energy is part of the astral energy of the solar system, and that therefore the sentient body, the sentient body of a human being is an atom of substance in the sentient body of the planetary logos. 2, the sentient body, a term I much prefer to the astral term, or the term astral rather, and which I shall continue to use, of the planetary logos is an aspect, not an atom, of the sentient body of the solar logos. So the sentient body of the planetary logos is an aspect, not an atom, of the sentient body of the solar logos. 3, this in turn is influenced by and is a channel for sentient forces emanating from vast centers of energy outside our solar system altogether. Well, that's deep stuff right there. If this is borne in mind, it becomes apparent that man, being a tiny fragment of a vaster whole, which in its turn is incorporated into a still vaster vehicle, is the meeting ground of forces greater and more diversified than his brain is capable of recognizing. Hence the complexity of his problem, and hence all the possibilities growing out of those expansions of consciousness, which we call initiation. All right, so there's both the complexity of the problem and the possibility in one place, making it the battleground. Every stream of energy pouring through his body of desire and of sentient reaction is but a pathway leading him to a wider and every widening and every stream. Sorry, let me say that again. Every stream of energy pouring through his body of desire and of sentient reaction is but a pathway leading him to a wider and every widening contacts and realizations. And I guess it means that's probably misspelling there. Ever widening contacts and realizations, right?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Pathway leads leading to wider and ever widening contacts. Could be.
Yeah. So here also lies the safeguard for the majority of human beings in the fact that they possess as yet an apparatus inadequate for the registering and recording of those infinite possibilities which these avenues of realization offer. Until the mental apparatus is sufficiently awakened and controlled, it would not be possible for man to interpret rightly and utilize correctly the information which his body of sensitive response could, but fortunately does not yet convey to him. So that's interesting there, Tom, because it says we can't use until the mental apparatus is sufficiently awakened and controlled, it would not be possible for man to interpret rightly and utilize correctly the information which his body of sensitive response could, but fortunately does not yet convey to him. That's interesting that it's fortunate, right? So that's something to really ponder on there a little bit. Apart from the constant circulation through his astral body of planetary and solar and cosmic energies, every human being has appropriated out of the greater whole enough of the astral energy wherewith to construct his own individual and separate astral body, responsive to his peculiar note, colored by his peculiar quality, and limiting him or not according to his point on the ladder of evolution. So we've attracted enough of this energy to create an astral body for ourselves. I guess, through evolution and magnetism, we pull this energy in and create this body that's made up of forces, sentient forces emanating from other parts of the solar system, which is really pretty unbelievable. But then after we pull that in, we have to regulate it, right? So it's as yet unregulated until it is. So this is a transmutation process again, or transformation and transmutation process. We're building, it's a process. This constitutes his astral ring pass knot, defining the limits of his emotional response to life experience, embodying its quality, the range of his desire life, but being at the same time capable of tremendous expansion, development, adjustment, and control under the impulse of the mental body and of the soul. It is subject also to vibratory activity as the result of the interplay between it and the physical plane life experience. And thus the great wheel of experience is set in motion and will persist until the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha are understood and realized. And that makes perfect sense. The mental body is going to be what is bringing the astral body under control. And this can be understood through the Four Noble Truths of how to really grab a hold of it. Because we know that we desire things, right? We suffer because we desire. And then we can work on this. And that is work. It's part of the great work. So the astral body has in its counterparts of the etheric or Laya centers, has in it the counterparts of the etheric or Laya centers, and through them stream the forces and energies earlier dealt with into the etheric body. These centers carry energies from the 7 planets and from the sun to every part of the astral organism, thus putting man in rapport with all parts of the solar system. This results in the fixation of a man's life destiny until such time as the man awakens to his immortal heritage and so becomes sensitive to forces that are as yet for the many unrecognized. These emanate from the form. This is the reason why a horoscope is frequently quite accurate in its delineation for the unevolved and for the unawakened, but is quite in error and at fault in the case of the highly evolved man. And Tom, this is what, when we were talking about, you know, you're either a product of the forces or we use the forces, or we're capable of using the forces, and then we learn to use them. So there's the definition right there, I guess, essentially between the unevolved and the unawakened and the highly evolved man. Man is in mass what his desire body makes him. Later, as a man thinketh, so he is. So then it's, at that point, it would be under control of the mental body. The astral body, or the soul, and the soul. The astral body, with its longings, appetites, moods, feelings, and cravings, molds the physical body through the attractive forces which flow through it, and so guides the man on unerringly to the fulfillment of his desires. Unerringly. So what you want, you're going to get. Right? Until our aspirate, you know, and you're going to keep living this earth experience the same way, jumping from one thing to another until our aspiration turns towards the soul. If the cravings of the sentient nature are dominantly animal in their objective, we shall have the man with strong appetites, living a life given over to the effort to satisfy them. And if the craving is for comfort and for happiness, we shall have the man with a sensuous, beauty-loving, and pleasure-loving disposition, governed practically entirely by selfish effort. And I think we all hit that point to, you know, in order to see what we really want, or
Right.
what, until the desire nature shifts upward. So it is through all the many grades of desire, good, bad, and ordinary, until that reorientation takes place, which so refocuses the astral energies that they are turned in a different direction. Desire becomes aspiration. Thus, liberation from the wheel of birth is brought about, and a man is freed from the necessity to reincarnate. Then the horoscope, as now understood, proves futile, untrue, and useless, and the term sometimes used but wrongly, the horoscope of the ego or the soul, means nothing. The soul has no individual destiny, but is submerged into the one with a capital O. Its destiny is the destiny of the group and of the whole. Its desire is the working out of the great plan, and its will is the glorification of the incarnated Logos. I would like to suggest to students that they procure, if possible, the Science of the Emotions by Bhagavan Das. It is an able treatise on the astral and sentient body and deals with the factors that most nearly concern the aspirant as he faces the problem of understanding and of controlling his emotional nature, of mastering the technique of development, and of reorienting it to wider experience, and of preparing it for the tests and expansions of the second major initiation, the baptism and the final entering of the stream. Metaphorically speaking, the experience that lies ahead upon the path is covered in the following esoteric phrases. When the stream enters the river of life, its passage can be traced for a short moment and then is lost. When the currents of the sentient life meet where the river passes round the mountain's massive foot, then one vast stream is seen which followeth north. The symbology of this is apparent and can also be used to depict the flow of the two currents, Ida and Pingala, and their blending in the river of energy that mounts to the head. There is the meeting place, and there the sacrifice enacted upon the Mount of Golgotha, the place of the skull. In considering the sentient body of a human being, I will probably help the most if I deal with it in terms of its moods and ordinary expressions, for it is only in dealing with its effects and in seeking to master them that man arrives at knowledge of himself and so becomes a master. The most ordinary manifestations of astral activity are fear, 1, 2, depression or its opposite pole, hilarity, 3, desire for the satisfaction of the animal appetites, 4, desire for happiness, and 5, desire for liberation and aspiration. In these 5, they're summed up practically most of the sentient experiences of man, and we will consider each one of them from the following angles: the cause, effect, and 3, the method of direction. You will note that I say method of direction and not method of control. Aspirants must learn that they are working with and in forces, and that right and wrong activity on the physical plane is due simply to a right or wrong direction of the force currents and not to anything inherently wrong or right in the energies themselves. And again, there's, energy follows thought. Right? And as a man thinketh, so he is. All those things are being explained here now. And I want to say we can understand this now. But fear, we're gonna dig in now into what we're talking about as far as fear goes. This is one of the most usual of the manifestations of astral energy, and is put first because it constitutes for the vast majority the dweller on the threshold, and also in the last analysis is the basic astral evil, insinuating that these can be found on the lower levels of the astral plane, where they call, essentially hell, which are the 2 lowest subplanes of the astral plane, right? Every human being knows fear, and the range of the fear vibrations extends from the instinctual fears of the savage man, based on his ignorance of the laws and forces of nature, and on his terror of the dark and the unknown, to the fear so prevalent today of loss of friends and of loved ones, of health, of money, of popularity, and on to the final fears of the aspirant, the fear of failure, the fear which has its roots in doubt, the fear of ultimate negation or of annihilation, the fear of death, which he shares equally with all humanity, the fear of the great illusion of the astral plane, of the phantasmagoria of life itself, and also fear of loneliness on the path, even to the very fear of fear itself. And man, what do you got there, Tom? I mean, we just covered.
That's pretty big.
that should be hard hitting for everybody there.
Yeah. Well, and you hit on something interestingly, or a little bit right at the beginning when you started reading the fear about going on the threshold, and also in the last analysis, the basic astral evil. And then it goes into all of these variety of fears. And essentially what I get from it is, this is how kind of people create their own hells, right? And it's through these fear factors, which really are kind of unnecessary, but everybody has to work through it, right? I know you and I have worked through our fears in the past. But I just kind of equate that with this notion that, excuse me, everybody kind of creates their own hell. And it's through this type of this mindset, and really, kind of holding yourself back in the lower astral realm, and overly attaching yourself with the physical and things like that. So there's a lot there to unpack, but that's kind of what I got. It's kind of what I immediately thought of when we were reading through that.
Well, and as you're saying that, you can begin to see how these fears are expressed everywhere, all throughout the physical plane life. Mm-hmm. And the one that pops up immediately is preppers.
Yeah.
Who feel the need, because they're seeing through some of the illusion, to begin to prepare themselves somehow.
Right.
And this is a lack. All this fear seems to me to be a lack of trust and ignorance, and ignorance meaning unknowing. And I think DK does say this here soon. So I'm going to hold what I'm going to say there. I think he says that, it's unwarranted, and it's always unwarranted. And right. The astral plane is an illusion, or these emotions are illusions brought about by our own ignorance, essentially.
Well, and they can really hold you back if you just allow yourself to become lost in it, right?
It's like children becoming, and I've heard this said by one of the sages. He says, we're terrified of the monsters of our own making, right? And this can be seen in every industry and every activity throughout life. Essentially, it's just it's abstract in a way, right?
Well, and then your thoughts follow form, right? Form follows thought.
Energy follows thought.
Energy follows thought, right? But where I was getting at with that is, if you let yourself get stuck here, in the fear, and using your prepper's example, eventually that is going to manifest itself, right? But you have to trust that it is what it is. It's you just got to kind of work through that. But to get lost in the fear of it, are you really doing yourself any good? Are you really doing the world any good? Is it really solving the problem, I guess?
Yeah. This is such an awesome topic, because awakening, right? As soon as you awaken, fear is right there waiting for you.
Right.
All of it's right there in your face. And it's like it all comes rushing at you at one time. And you can almost say, you can look at that like the new crisis. This is your new crisis. Now you see all of this. And you got to make sense of it all somehow. You have to put it in its rightful place and understand what all that means, because it is freaky when you wake up,
right,
and you go, oh, this is not, this is weird. This is just a lot of weird, bad, it's apparently bad things. Like, what is going on here? We're in trouble. This is scary now.
right.
And that's a new crisis that we have to deal on. So yeah, and then, right now, DK is literally helping those of us who woke up to all that and showing us how to overcome this.
And that's the key, because the waking up part is great. Wake up. Realize that you've been living through a veil of illusion and everything isn't what it seems. But don't, in the process, create your own hell out of fear for the what you've awoken to. And
yeah, because waking up is a great thing.
It is a great thing.
But it immediately looks daunting.
Right.
And it's like an instant daunting, too. It's almost instant. It's like, oh, I've been lied to you. About what? Everything. And then all of those things, as you start turning your head, looking right and left, you realize how you've been conditioned, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is what? Now what? Now what? Lots of tears. That's what I'm in, in a way.
Right.
Lots of meditation, lots of prayer at that point, lots of feeling helplessness initially, lots of fear. I need to prep. I need to save money. I need gold. Right. And oh my gosh, all these things are going to dissolve in front of my face. And in that, you can see that there are also people waiting there for the moment you wake up to get you put back into the next thing, to grab you and put you into the fear. Right? You need gold.
Right.
We've been telling you this all along, but you didn't hear it. But now you're awake, and now you know you need gold. You need guns. You need all this stuff. You need to be prepared. And it's like, these people must know because they woke up. Yeah, they're waiting for you, sucker. In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So it could go both ways. And then there's another group waiting there to go, hey, like DK and the masters and the new group of world servers are waiting to go, hey, you just stepped foot into something that you know not. Let us guide you, right? So there's both sides of that initially. Very cool, man. This is something, this is something you could talk about for days, really.
Oh, I'm sure.
All right, let's, because this continues to get good, more interesting. This list could be largely extended, but suffices to indicate the prevalence of fears of all kind. They dominate most situations and darken many happy moments. They reduce man to a timid and frightened atom of sentient life, standing afraid before the stupendousness of the problems of existence, aware of his insufficiency as a man to cope with all situations and unable to leave his fears and questioning behind and step into his heritage of freedom and of life. Well, there's the good news of this, right? Because that there comes a point when we leave fear behind and we step into the heritage of freedom and of life. So that's great. Often he's so ridden by fear that he becomes afraid of his very reason. The picture cannot be too blackly colored. For fear is the dominant astral energy at this time, and sensitive humanity succumbs all too easily to it. And I think we actually do succumb to it in ways that we don't even realize we are getting put into it. We
Right.
think we're doing the right thing by being prepared, but that's just another illusion, essentially. I mean, it is ultimately, but in that moment, it does feel very real, right? The picture cannot be too blackly colored. So whatever we roll out on in the future, as far as this goes, seems like it's free game because that's how bad it is. Initially, it seems just like terrifying. So you ask, what are the basic causes of fear? To that question, if carried far enough back into the esoteric history of the solar system, there is no intelligible answer to be given. Only the advanced initiate can comprehend. Fear has its roots in the warp and woof of matter itself and is par excellence a formulation or effect of the mind principle and a result of mental activity. The fact that birds and animals know fear puts the whole subject upon a wider footing than if it were simply a human failing and the result of the activity of the functioning of the human mind. It is not incident upon man's possessing a reasoning mind. If he used his reason in the correct way, he would eliminate fear. It lies in what is called cosmic evil, a high-sounding phrase conveying little. It is inherent in the fact of matter itself and in the play of the pairs of opposites, soul and matter. The sentient souls of animals and of men are subconsciously aware of factors such as the vastness and therefore the sensed oppression of the whole. 2, the pressure of all the other lives of existences. 3, the working of inexorable law. 4, the sense of imprisonment, of limitation, and of consequent inadequacy. And every time I've read this, I think that it's inherent in the fact of matter itself and the play in the pairs of opposites, soul and matter. It would have to me something to do with the low vibrational aspect of fear, the very low densest, the density of the thoughts, that are very compact, right? Like it's all there all at one time. It's not very expansive and spread out and can't be compartmentalized yet.
Mm.
What do you think of that? Does that sound fair?
Yeah, but I think there could be a wider, I think people could experience I want to say a wider fear, but that's not really what I'm trying to get across. I don't know that it will always necessarily be compartmentalized or, that compact. Like some people's fear might expand a bit. Some people might take it a bit too far. Let's put it like that.
Well, yeah, energy follows thought.
Right.
And it's right there waiting for you. The fear is right there when you go there.
Yeah.
As opposed to later on, you're not going to go there.
Right.
It's not really there. We put it in its rightful place, I guess. Right. And then look, we can see it and how it's moving, I guess, in others. Yeah, that's a pretty abstract kind of a thing there. Do you want to try to read, or do you want me to
yeah, I can give it a shot. Where did we leave off though?
In these factors.
Oh, we read through the 4 factors or not yet?
Yeah. We read through those 4 factors,
okay.
1, 2, 3, and 4.
In these factors, growing out of the manifested process itself and persisting and growing in potency during the ages are found the causes of all modern fear and the basis of all terror, above all that which is purely psychological and not just the instinctual fear of the animal. To concretize the matter more clearly would not help. Of what use is it to be told that the fear is a quality of evil or of matter, which colors fundamentally or characterizes the astral or sentient body of our planetary logos? It's quite a question.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah. To concretize the matter more clearly would not help. Of what use is it to be told that the fear is a quality of evil or of matter, which colors fundamentally or characterizes the astral sentient body of our planetary logos? Excuse me.
And just real quick, though.
Yeah.
In terms of fear, we know that evil is happening around the world.
Right.
We all know this. We know that somewhere right now somebody's getting robbed. We know that somebody got murdered, not long ago. We know that there's car crashes happening every so often. We know that there's all these perceivably bad things taking place. So, that's also there. We really need to rise above that and realize that that's not your karma. That's not your life path. That's not for you. That's not how this is going to go for you. Those things are, these things are happening. It's true. But that's also because of certain things that don't have anything to do with you.
Right. But in the instance where it does, well, okay, it is written. What can you do about it?
Learn.
If that's, but why fear that stuff?
Right.
Because if it's written that that's how you're going to go out, you're going to get murdered or whatever, what purpose does it do you to fear?
Zero.
Of being murdered? Nothing.
Right. The end result's gonna be right. What it is.
It's gonna.
You could be happy on the way out,
right? Instead
of fear, you know.
But in the unknowing that you don't know if that's how you're going to go out, then there's no point in fearing that might be the way you go out. There's just
right.
And
that's
for
what
any of the other
like
stuff,
I say, dude. This is Monsters Inc.
There's no reason to fear that you might someday get robbed. Okay. Yes, you might, but so what? If it happens, it happens. Yeah. There's no need to worry and fear about it in advance.
Right. It's always like Monsters Inc., man. I always refer to that. When the monsters go in and they make everybody scream. And there's all these ups and downs and all this through the movie. And at the end that, they find out that laughter is more powerful than fear or whatever, And at no point was there a need for the fear either, right? There's no need for it. It's like any movie you watch that has all of these emotions going on throughout the movie. And, there was no need to express any of that. You could have just been happy. You could have just been relaxed. But anyway, yeah, we're at what have you gained there?
Yep. The next question, what have you gained if I outline to you the problem of the great life in whom we live and move and have our being as he, on his own cosmic plane, seeks liberation and faces his own peculiar trials and tests? How can words adequate be found? That must be a spell typo too. Yeah, it is. How can words adequate be found to convey a cosmic struggle between lives so impersonal and exalted in consciousness that the words his or he or tests prove simply laughable and convey no possible aspect of truth or reality whatsoever? Cosmic evil, cosmic progression, or cosmic problems can well be left to that distant time when aspirants have taken the third initiation, have lost all sense of separateness, and being identified with the life aspect and not with the form side, can therefore enter somewhat into the state of consciousness of our planetary logos, sense his destiny, and vision fleetingly the wonder of the consummation. Let us confine our attention, therefore, to man, and more particularly to average man, and see whence come the waves of fear which sweep him so constantly off his feet. 1. The fear of death is based upon, excuse me, a terror of the final rending process and the act of death itself. B. Horror of the unknown and the indefinable. C. Doubt as to final immortality. D. Unhappiness at leaving loved ones behind or of being left behind. E. Ancient reactions to past violent deaths lying deep in the subconsciousness. F. Clinging to form life because primarily identified with it in consciousness. And G. Old erroneous teaching as to heaven and hell, both equally unpleasant in prospect to certain types. I speak about death as one who knows the matter from both the outer world experience and the inner life expression. There is no death. There is, as you know, entrance into fuller life. There is freedom from the handicaps of the fleshy vehicle. The rending process, so such dreaded, does not exist, except in the cases of violent and of sudden death, and then the only true disagreeables are an instant and overwhelming sense of imminent peril and destruction, and something closely approaching an electric shock. No more. For the unevolved, death is literally a sleep and a forgetting. For the mind is not sufficiently awakened to react, and the storehouse of memory is as yet practically empty. For the average good citizen, death is a continuance of the living process in his consciousness and a carrying forward of the interests and tendencies of the life. His consciousness and his sense of awareness are the same and unaltered. He does not sense much difference, is well taken care of, and oft is unaware that he has passed through the episode of death. For the wicked and cruelly selfish, for the criminal, and for those few who live for the material side only, there eventuates that condition which we call earthbound. The links they have forged with earth and the earthward bias of all their desires force them to remain close to the earth and their last setting in the earth environment. They seek desperately and by every possible means to recontact it and to re-enter. In a few cases, great personal love for those left behind or the non-fulfillment of a recognized and urgent duty holds the good and beautiful in a somewhat similar condition. For the aspirant, death is an immediate entrance into a sphere of service and of expression to which he is well accustomed and which he at once recognizes as not new. In his sleeping hours, he has developed a field of active service and of learning. He now simply functions in it for the entire 24 hours, talking in terms of physical plane time, instead of for his usual few hours of earthly sleep.
Hey man, I gotta say this to you. Because this is so profound, this topic, right? The earthbound, right? Now we look at, why they're earthbound, and it's because they're cruel and selfish. And cruel and selfish people have a lot of bad habits, right? So, and it's said that, your desires, upon death are your desires on the other side. And I'm talking straight from the, DK material. And an interesting thing about this, and an important part of this, I want to say is alcohol opens us up to these earthbounders, right? And they congregate around the places where they can get the experience that they're looking for. Like a drunk is going to be found where there's other drunks, or a drunk where they know that they're going to be, around that. So when we hang around places of ill repute, you're actually hanging around where other people would want to be, to come in and experience through you that drunkenness, or that evil that you're partaking in, those drugs, those whatever behavior pattern that you set. That's the danger of getting involved in that type of stuff, because we're opening ourselves up to more or less spirits. Or al-ghul, alcohol comes from an Arabic word al-ghul, and jinn, if you know about, jinn they're evil spirits, the jinn, and we call it, it's literally called spirits. So, and then we're also drinking the ancestry of that alcohol and stuff, and the evil behind it. So yeah, this is the reasons why we stay away from those things. But it's just so interesting to see that, this is actually how this works. And, it makes you wonder about, what's going on around us. Yeah. And we know why they cleanse our environment, and whatnot. And people have feelings that there's somebody here, or that, there's some sort of energy or something. And then they use sage to cleanse the environment and stuff, right? So yeah, it's freaking wild, man. So I just want to throw that in there, because I think that where those people go and where they're congregating, it's important to know that. Yeah. And so it's not just like, oh, I'm going out and having a good time, blah, blah, blah. You get stuck in that pattern, and you're opening yourself up to all the other people, those on the other side who are there for good reason. Sorry.
No, that was good. As time progresses and before the close of the next century, death will be finally seen to be non-existent in the sense in which it is now understood. Continuity of consciousness will be so widely developed, and so many of the highest types of men will function simultaneously in the two worlds, that the old fear will go, and the intercourse between the astral plane and the physical plane will be so firmly established and so scientifically controlled that the work of the trance mediums will rightly and mercifully come to an end. The ordinary common trance mediumship and materializations under controls and Indian guides are just as much perversions of the intercourse between the two planes as are sex perversions and the distortions of the true relationship and intercourse between the sexes. I refer not here to the work of clairvoyance, no matter how poor, nor to the taking possession of the body by entities of high caliber, but of the unpleasant phenomena of the materialization seance, of ectoplasm, and the blind, unintelligent work done by old Atlantean degenerates and earthbound souls, the average Indian chief and guide. Excuse me. There is nothing to be learned from them and much to be avoided. The reign of the fear of death is well nigh ended, and we shall soon enter upon a period of knowledge and of certainty which will cut away the ground from under all our fears. In dealing with the fear of death, there is little to be done except to raise the whole subject onto a more scientific level, and in the scientific sense, teach people to die. There is a technique of dying just as there is of living, but this technique has been lost very largely in the West and is almost lost except in a few centers of knowers in the East. More of this can perhaps be dealt with later, but the thought of the needed approach to this subject can rest in the minds of the students who read this, and perhaps as they study and read and think, material of interest will come their way which could be gradually assembled and published.
And DK does go into that a bit. He explains in some of these books, I don't know if it's Esoteric Psychology or it's one of them, he goes into the dying process and how the energies come together in order to make it happen. It's very, so when he says that there at the bottom, material of interest will come their way, he means it, and it'll be assembled and published. It's there. Yeah, it's cool. You want me to pick up?
No, I'm just thinking through that real quick. Rest of the minds of students who read this, and perhaps as they study and read a thing, material of interest will come their way, which will be gradually assembled and published. So yeah, that's part of the task, right? Is kind of spreading this knowledge in an easier way and in an easy, understandable format for our brothers and sisters out there.
You know, I went
through,
between you and I guess whoever's listening to this, when he talked about the fear of past traumas, death through trauma and that traumatic deaths and stuff. I think that's happened to all of us, man.
Yeah.
And it's still, and that ancient fear is still kind of there, which is always and every time found to be unnecessary, but it was always there before. That fear was there right up until you're leaving, right? Like there comes, it seems to me that there's this immediate acceptance the moment that and then you rest into that knowing, because there's now, like you can't be saved at that, like there's no coming back from this. And then I want to say you just really you can relax into it. And that's for a while. I don't know, it was a year and a half or so, 2 years ago, I don't remember, but I had this feeling like I've done this so many times. I've died so many times. And it was like, just rest into it. It's fine. It's all fine, So just interesting. But now, it'll be so awesome, man, to know the process. And as it's happening to you, to be able to see what's happening in awareness, hopefully, right? And to kind of work with that process as it's going on, instead of being subject to it, and you can be a part of it and really appreciate it for what it is, Sorry.
Oh, no worries. 2, the fear of the future. This is a fear that will as yet show a growing tendency to develop and will cause much distress in the world before it is obliterated. It grows out of 3 human capacities. A, instinctive psychological thought habits, which have their roots deep in the animal nature and hark back to the primal instinct of self-preservation. Savage races, however, have little of this. That forward-looking anticipatory state of mind is predominantly a human characteristic and is that germ of the imaginative faculty linked to the mental processes which will eventually merge into that intuitive meditation plus visualization, which is the true basis of all creative work. But at present, it is a menace and a hindrance. Ancient suffering, dire memories, haunting miseries, deep-seated in the subconscious rise to the surface frequently and cause a condition of fear and of distress which no amount of reasoning seems able to quiet. Facilities of communication can put even the most unimportant en rapport with the tragedies, pains, and sufferings of his brothers thousands of miles away. The economic catastrophe of the present time has brought about a condition of mass terror, and the more sensitive the individual, the more he will react to this state of mind. Buy gold. Fear of the future is therefore a distressing blend of instinctual memory and anticipatory imagination, and few there are who escape this menace. Worry and anxiety are the lot of every man and cannot and will not be offset and overcome by any lesser factor than the soul itself. B, the flashes of prevision emanating from the soul who is dwelling in the consciousness of the eternal now. When contact with the soul is firmly established and the consciousness of the knower is stabilized in the brain, then prevision will carry with it no terror. The picture will then be seen as a whole and not as a passing and fragmentary glimpse as is now the case. So again, the remedy remains the same. The establishing of such close relations between the soul and the brain via the trained and controlled mind that cause and effect will be seen as one, and right steps can be taken to handle situations correctly and to the best advantage. Prevision seldom takes the form of forecasting happiness, and the reason is not far to seek. The race is at a point where the prodigal son is conscious of the husks and of the futility of earthly life. He is ready for a careful consideration of the Buddha's message, and he is ready because he has been devoured for centuries by war and famine, by desire, and by the economic struggle. The vista he sees before him appears black and forbidding and full of cataclysmic disaster. Yet, if men carry the concept of brotherhood with all its implications into the life and work of every day, into all intercourse, whether between the capitalist and the laborer, the politician and the people, between nation and nation, or between race and race, there would emerge that peace on earth which nothing could upset or overturn. So simple a rule, and yet utterly beyond the mental grasp of the majority.
And it's just right human relations.
Yeah.
If people would stop harming other people, then fear would have to be put away, because there's the said, what's that? You'd be a warrior in a garden, and a garden and a warrior. We have all this now.
Right.
You don't need to act it. Right. You see what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
They talk about, it's good to be a dangerous man or something. Well, that doesn't mean you have to go around harming people. Just because we're all capable of it, you idiots. Right. I mean? Like, everybody has this. This is not something unique to you. Don't, what do you think you're going to do? Come just pull roughshod over everyone? Like, stop harming people.
Right.
And then, you stop creating fear. And if you want to create fear, there's really not going to be any room for you in the future. There's no room for that. Somebody who's bullying or creating fear is gonna have to be taught lesson. You're going to learn the hard way eventually, whether this life or in the next. You're going to be pulled aside for remedial help.
Right. I just find it interesting that he mentions that in here this way, with these, these subgroups that typically are in opposition to each other, right? Capitalists and laborers, politicians and people, nations between nations, races between races. It's
I wonder,
you boil down, we're all essentially the same, right? So what's the fear? What's the reason to kind of be in opposition to each other?
It's selfishness right now.
Or fear the opposition between the subgroup.
I think in my mind, and I could be 100% wrong, I see it pretty clearly. These people are selfish. They've been, I'm talking about the political arena for the most part. They've been corrupted. They likely, most of them are working for the same team. They're employing ancient philosophies to keep the masses under control. I see Hegel's philosophy pretty clearly, and that's where it's thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis comes. And they're really just playing and manipulating the masses at this point. And it's selfishness. That's the only thing it could be, right? I mean, No matter what you're selfish about, power, money, all these things, you're wrong. You know, there's no politician standing up there talking about right human relations. They might say a blurb in, or we need to work bipartisan, this or that. Shut your mouth. It's the people of the country and the world who are allowing this nonsense to take place.
Right.
If there's people opposed to each other, they should be removed from that.
Right.
If you don't have the best interest in an intelligent manner, we need to stand up and go, listen, you're all full of crap. You don't belong here. You might be charismatic and you might blah, blah, have rich parents and an education and come from this particular group of people that promote, politics, but we got to stop this. We have to it's our job to recognize it and then make the changes.
Right.
We can't keep you given to, lesser evils. We can't be choosing from lesser evils anymore. We have to choose from the better of the good.
Well, and here we also, it's kind of indicating that you kind of got to let go of your preconditioned, belief, I guess, into how you view some of these groups that are outside of your typical quote unquote camp or whatever. Because what he's trying to say here, I think, is, and he mentions this is a simple rule, so it's easy for you and me to understand, but by the masses, right, it's going to be difficult to kind of grasp this because there's been so much preconditioning our entire lives that have put us in one form of thought versus another, in one belief system versus another. And as a part of that belief system, that which opposes your belief system is not good, so to say. But here where it's saying is basically we're all brothers. And that true concept of brotherhood is you got to put all that crap aside and just, I guess, work together.
So the higher expression of the duality of this political system that we're looking at in this country in particular is, and I'm talking the higher expression of it as talked about by DK, is it's a group of those who want to evolve in consciousness, the entity, the group, the country, whatever, faster, and those who want to go slower in evolution. And then the choices then become, in between how we're going to work that out. Not this expression that we're seeing abstracted down here, which is just so far, apart. And it should all be done intelligently by illumined minds, right? And someday, I assume, even in the age of Aquarius, I would think 1,000 years, 1,500 years from now, that's probably going to be the case, right? But right now, we're seeing this real huge separation and discord between them, and it makes sense because we're just all waking up. So humanity hasn't woken up yet to see that right human relations is the only way to have peace, essentially. It's all about right human relations.
Right.
It's all about how you're projecting yourself onto others. And then they're causing us fear. They're not doing us. This whole political system, the media, it's all fear-based. So that's keeping us down, dude. So, but where's the politicians out there going and talking about what we're talking about right now? That's who you want to elect.
Right.
Those who actually have your best interest of your soul in mind. Now, that may be too far, getting too far ahead of ourselves because things have to be worked out down here and there has to be these clashes. But eventually, we've got to stand up for ourselves.
Right. All right. C, a mass of individual distress and fear can be taken on by an individual and yet have nothing to do with him whatsoever. It is quite possible for a man to tune in on the fears of other people whilst he himself has literally nothing to fear of any kind. He can so identify himself with their forebodings of future disaster that he interprets them in terms of his own coming experience. He is unable to dissociate with himself from their reactions, absorbs so much of the poison in their emotional and mental auras that he is swept into a very vortex of terror and of fear. Yet, if he did but know it, the future holds for him no hidden catastrophes. He is simply deluded, but the effect on his astral body and upon his solar plexus is identically the same. This is painfully the case now that there are so many thousands of sensitive, aspiring souls, inexperienced in the handling of the world karma, wide open to the suffering of others, and unable to distinguish between their own destiny in the immediate future and the destiny of others in their environment. It is possible also for the more advanced aspirant and those upon the path of discipleship to contact ancient vibrations of evil and misery on the astral plane. Evil long past and gone, it is possible for them to read a tiny fragment of the Akashic records, which concerns coming distress to an individual or a group, which they themselves may never see and yet nevertheless appropriate the conveyed information to themselves and suffer consequently.
Well, and that, it seems to be alluding to, we're connected to the collective unconscious, right? And, we're going to experience that from others. I mean, there are those with, in their astrology, and because, we study our astrology, that we know that there can be a prophetic sense in astrology, right? It could be there in somebody's chart, and they may not know that, they don't know it's in their chart, but they're going to be reacting to that sense or that intuition, and then it's going to be distorted, not really having understood that there is this collective and that we are connected to the vibrations of others. And, it's not until we know this material and we're told this that we can start removing ourselves from it and making space. Making space is probably a really good term here.
Yeah.
We need to make space, and we know that it's there. We can see it, and we don't have to be of it. In it, but not of it. Right? Do you want me to read a little bit there, buddy?
I think I'm still good.
Okay.
Give it a go.
I think we're on
I can
fear.
probably finish out this little subsection and then you can pick up on depression. Fear of physical pain, which is the third fear. Some people have this fear as the underlying cause of all their anxieties, little though they may recognize it. It is really a result of the other three classes of fears, of the strain which they put upon their astral body and the tension caused by the use of the imaginative faculty and the reasoning tension in the physical nervous system. The system becomes very much oversensitized and capable of the most acute physical suffering. Ills and ails which would seem of no vital importance to the ordinary and more phlegmatic types are aggravated into a condition of real agony. This should be recognized by those who care for the sick, and steps should be taken to minimize the physical condition through the use of sedatives and of anesthetics, so that undue strain should not be put on an already overworked nervous system. You ask me whether I am endorsing the use of ether and chloroform in operations and of sedative drugs. Not basically, but most certainly temporarily. When man's contact with his soul is firmly established, and when he has developed the faculty of passing in and out of his physical body at will, these helps will no longer be needed. They may be regarded in the meantime as emergency measures necessitated by world karma and the point of evolution of the race. I am not, of course, referring to the use of narcotics and of drugs by hysterical and unbalanced people, but to the judicious use of ameliorants of pain under the wise guidance of the physician. So is he saying there that, well, okay, how the
He's saying that I think he's saying that the mental condition of a person at that point is making it worse.
right, but that there can come a point where immense contact with the soul is firmly established and develop the faculty of passing in and out of the physical body at will. You can essentially control that physical pain.
Right, and then then there's no need for that, right? Because once you control the mind, then you can witness the pain but not be in it and of it, or you can witness it and then know that it's there, but you don't have to fear it in any way. It's just is what it is. But it's interesting here because it's not for the use by the hysterical or imbalanced. This is
I think that's referring to like your non-physician prescribed your street drugs, narcotics and drugs.
But also, he's also it's just temporarily, and really those people need, I want to say mental help, but I'm talking about they need help to help themselves on the mental plane, right? To know that what they're doing is causing themselves and their nervous system more stress.
Right.
Because we don't know this information. If this were part of our education system, then this would not be the case, because we would all intuit, we would all understand what was happening to ourselves and the reasons for medical conditions. Now, some you can't get around; they are what they are, But you don't. Doesn't need to be a gigantic stress about it. And I want to say, man, because I had experienced, lots of injuries and stuff, that I absolutely had a fear of additional pain because I had experienced so much pain. I was so tired of it. I was scared to experience any more. And I was just like, I'm done. I don't want any more. I can't handle any more pain. But now, once you kind of start, we use the mind better, then you can look at it and you don't have to be in it, you don't have to be stressed out about it anymore. It's just there. If something's wrong, it's just something wrong. Go to the doctor, And like he said up here, though, he literally said that there's no need for this. Whilst he himself has literally nothing to fear of any kind, it's quite possible for a man to tune in on the fears of others, whilst he himself has literally nothing to fear of any kind. We literally have nothing to fear. There is no death. There is pain, but so what? I don't know, man. Like, so what? Nobody enjoys it, but you can rise above it.
Right.
And then, and a lot of times we're damaging ourselves with our thoughts, like hypochondriacs. They're creating diseases in themselves. Right? They think that they have everything, and then it ends up what they really have is some level of deep depression, stress, anxiety. Their nervous system is being overworked. They're tired, and then it causes all this disruption. And it's just an emotional problem that can be solved by mental awareness of it. I'm not downplaying people's conditions. I don't like seeing people in that state. It's just we know that they don't have to be in that, especially when it seems like they're worried about BS.
Well, fear is a way to control and can hold you down. if you get lost in it, just like anything else.
Well,
So
all of our programming these days is literally fear-based.
right.
I mean, even the movies, dude, like there are some entertaining movies out there. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy that stuff. But if coming from a different angle, it is just more programming into more emotional, like, oh, this is how we should respond. And,
Right.
Subconscious, like creating all this nonsense.
Yeah.
Until you kind of wake up and are aware of, of it. It can be entertaining, and then you can see the deeper meanings and the stories and whatnot. But initially, it's just keeping people in a box, I want to say. Like it's saying, like, it's okay to be fearful. It's okay to be scared and screaming and hysterical. It's okay to drink because this happened to you. It's okay. All these things are okay during certain situations of your life, right? Like it's not okay. You're doing this to yourself. You're just perpetuating your own BS. Right? Stop it. Oh, that's kind of a maybe harsh take a little bit, but you have to feel for him because we were all in that situation.
Right.
So it comes from both sides, I guess.
All right. The fear of failure. This affects many people along many lines. The fear that one may fail to make good, the fear that we may not gain the love and admiration of those we love, the fear that others despise us or look down upon us, the fear that one may fail to see and grasp opportunity. These are all aspects of the fear complex, which colors the lives of so many worthy people. This can be based upon an environment which is uncongenial and unappreciative, on an equipment which seems inadequate to its task, and in many cases has its roots in the fact that a man is a disciple or a really big soul ready to tread the probationary path. He has had a touch of soul contact. He has seen the vision and the possibility. He looks at his personality and ranges it up alongside the work to be done and the quality of the people with whom that has. The result is an inferiority complex of a most powerful kind because fed by real streams of force from above. Energy, we know, follows thought and is tinctured by the quality of that thought. The man turns a critical and disgusted eye upon his personality, and by so doing feeds the very things which he deplores, and thus renders himself still more inadequate to the task. It is a vicious circle of effort and must be offset by a complete realization of the truth contained in the words, "As a man thinketh, so is he." As he dwells upon the nature of his omniscient soul, he becomes like that soul. His thought is focused in the soul consciousness, and he becomes aware that soul in manifestation through the medium of the personality. This is a brief summation of the major fears which afflict humanity and serve only to open up the subject and give opportunity for a few practical suggestions. So, fear of failure.
Well, and go ahead, sorry.
Well, I was just this one for me has always been, so there was a time when I did fear failure, but as time evolved and I evolved, I kind of came to the realization that it's very, very silly to ever fear any kind of failure, because failure is a necessary component in actually achieving, right? Because you can learn from failure.
Yeah, but we always feel like we're letting others down,
Well, there's that. But you learn from that as well.
Right.
And you can't really find a success in something if you haven't first failed at it, I guess is what I'm.
Well, yeah, and we're always looking for some level of comfort too. And
right.
Guess what? This place is not designed for that.
No. But you can become comfortable with your failures too.
Yeah, exactly. And comfortable with ourselves, through knowing ourselves. What hit me in that part was when he says this can be based upon an environment which is uncongenial and unappreciative. Well, name to me one that is, other than our homes of those who are awake, where it is congenial and appreciative. The mass environment of the world is unfreaking congenial and unappreciative. Now, this requires us to freaking know that in order for us to have the fear to be gone, we need to see how we're being treated. Not to say that any of it was necessarily wrong. It doesn't matter, but it's going forward, right? Or it's now that, we accept it or we don't in each instant, essentially, right? I mean, now we're talking on different levels there, but, once you wake up to this stuff, it's like all negativity must go. It must go, and it must go now at all costs. Burn it down. Let it burn to rebuild it, right? The phoenix has to come out. It comes out of the ashes. So let it burn. And then, and this result, these things result in an inferiority complex. We all have that. Mm-hmm. I certainly had that.
Yeah.
Because of the positions that in the boxes that we're put into.
Right.
And I want to say you and I, as we go through this, there's probably nothing that we can't relate to. Because we've scaled this, this up and down this astral energy, and we can see it now. But at some point, I think you just make the decision where you're not going to accept it any longer. And that there's another period of transformation in that, because you're going to upset people. The whole apple cart's getting tossed over. The money changers table is going to get thrown, right? All that. It's going to, the whole thing is going to be flipped upside down and then the whole system is really, the collective is self-protecting. So you're going to get attacked unless you somehow do it with some grace, which is hard because we don't have this education yet. So this is the education that we need in actuality from the, through school. This is not even college. This should be starting off when, as soon as after we can read, write, and do math,
Right.
This is also our real history in this too, which is intense. So, right. Do you want to leave it there? How long have we been going, man?
We've been going a bit, but here's the thing. It looks like we only have about 2 pages left on the PDF, but if you let me take a quick 2-minute break, then you can pick up this depression bit and we can just finish out this subsection of 10. Do you want to do that?
Well, I'm just going to hit pause.
Let's do that. Let me take a quick 2-minute break.
Okay. All right. I guess I should go just because I got something I need to go take care of. So we'll pick back up on this on our next go with depression.
Sounds good.
Yeah, or sometime during the week or next Sunday. So
sounds good.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
Have a good week. Yeah, we'll talk to you later.
You too.
All right.